If the mere mention of the name Fortnite makes your eyes roll, believe me, I understand. After all, we're talking about a game that gets its funding from the production and sale of digital content like this. But like it or not, Epic Games is raking in nearly $300 million a month from the game, and has somehow placed its IP in the unique position of being both the top-grossing console game and top-grossing iOS game within the last few weeks. Needless to say, the developers of other games are watching these numbers, and a noticeable trend is taking place within the industry. As scary as that sounds, I actually think Fortnite is making an impact that will ultimately benefit every game consumer out there, regardless of the genre you play or the platform you play it on. Give me a few minutes of your time, and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Fortnite has surpassed the monthly gross revenue of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which pioneered the 100-player deathmatch system. Epic Games just straight up stole the concept and is taking all the credit. Fortnite's original mechanic of building structures came from a zombie survival game that was released about 10 years too late to be relevant. So when the devs grew to have an interest in PUBG, they simply reworked the zombie engine into a battle royale engine and released it as a standalone game. But Epic Games is not the only company engaging in this behavior. E3 2018 showed the announcement of at least 7 Battle Royale clones attempting to cash in on the popular trend, including both Battlefield 5 and Call of Duty Black Ops 4, which I'm sure won't backfire with their notably patient and understanding player bases. While some of those will end up more successful than others, none of them will get even close to the financial precedent Epic Games has set, and here's why. Fortnite's success has nothing to do with the Battle Royale format. I know, I hear you yelling. If Fortnite was a flop zombie game and suddenly became popular after the switch to Battle Royale, the popularity of the game mode must be responsible. Well, to be honest, the Battle Royale 100-player deathmatch thing is a pretty interesting concept, and I think the success of PlayerUnknown's is mostly due to how unique it was on release. But Fortnite's appeal is due to having essentially no barrier to entry. During the shift from zombie to Battle Royale, Epic also cut the price from $40 to free-to-play. This early version was more of a mini-game intended to draw sales of their zombie main game, and the budget for the experiment was noticeably small. But 100 players is a lot to have in one match, and with no paywall to restrict entry, word of mouth carried far. No one wanted to play alone, so entire friend groups downloaded the game en masse to work together or compete with one another. I mean, why not, right? Unlike PUBG, Fortnite was free. Of course, anyone that knows anything about economics will tell you that you can't make money by giving your product away. Which brings me to my second point. When you download Fortnite, someone else pays for your copy of the game. To explain what I mean by this, I first have to describe the old methods of video game financing, so excuse this brief tangent. In the late 70s and early 80s, arcade games were relatively cheap, using the low barrier to entry of a few quarters, along with quick and satisfying, yet brutally difficult gameplay, to make you come back with more money when you die, but also working against having a long line form behind the machine. Arcade cabinets paid for their game's development, the electronics that housed them, the manufacturing of the cabinet itself, and shipping, with piles and piles of loose change from many different players. At the same time, Atari was selling its 2600 home console, which had a much larger barrier to entry of $200 1970s, and demanded the purchase of game cartridges, which were sold separately. Arcade cabinets were cheap up front, and by watching the eye catch, or another player, you could get a sense of what the game was like before investing any money at all. But Atari was the opposite. It required all the money up front, and you essentially had no idea what the game was like until plugging it in the console. Their game's development, electronics, and shipping were covered by a single upfront payment on an individual basis. This has been the precedent for years, but it's changing. Fortnite costs nothing to play, so all its financing comes from in-game purchases. This makes Fortnite's model more similar to the arcade machine analogy, but with one key difference. The majority of Epic's income arrives from a few players who spend a fortune on in-game items, rather than a little bit from everyone. The players with money to burn are putting a lot more than just a few quarters in the Fortnite machine, but in the process are also paying for the players waiting in line to play behind them. This allows those with easy access to cash to buy cosmetics that help them enjoy the game further, and allows those tight in the wallet access to a game without paying a cent. The truth is, video games are cheaper now than they've ever been. In 1990, purchasing an NES game like Super Mario 3 or Double Dragon 2 cost about $50, not too far off from games on the shelf today. But after adjusting for inflation, $50 of 1990s currency becomes around $90 for an 8-bit cartridge. If you look back farther, it gets even worse. That $200 for an Atari 2600 of 1970s money becomes more like $800 today. Of course, electronic components are cheaper today than they were then, and producing a Blu-ray disc is much cheaper than a motherboard. But compare the amount of work required in development of an Atari game to a PS4 or Xbox One game. The demands of consumers have increased exponentially, while their expectations of price have decreased. Naturally, development companies are going to find a way of covering these additional costs. For years, the gimmick was that you were expected to pay for minute game updates by rebuying the next game in the franchise every year. A clever ploy to make what is essentially a subscription service appear like a one-time purchase. Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed being the most egregious examples, but certainly not the only two responsible. The problem with this methodology is that with every sequel released, the player base becomes fragmented. Most players move on to the new game, sure, but some prefer one of the older ones, and some may lose interest entirely. Although I don't see COD or AC changing anytime soon, some developers learned that when they seem to have a game people like to play, why not just let them keep playing it? Video games now have a longer potential lifespan than ever before. By charging a monthly subscription to play, or better yet, offering the optional purchase of membership to access additional features, you keep a large player base contained and growing within a single title. Jagex has used this format to support RuneScape for nearly 20 years at this point, and the game still has a thriving community today. But if you've been playing a subscription-based game for years, even if it's reasonably priced, it doesn't take long for the money spent to build up. So, how do developers use what they learned from MMOs to lengthen the lifecycle of console games? Although Overwatch was certainly not the first, it popularized the system of purchasing in-game items at random, like packs of trading cards. This allowed Blizzard to finance the cost of future updates and game development without the need of an Overwatch 2. For those of you that don't read a game's TOS before you sign it, me included, there's actually a legal term used to describe this specific strategy. They're called games as a service, meaning that they have a means of financing besides the original purchase and will be maintained for years into the future. This is a good thing. However, at this point in time, most games as a service require the purchase of a $60 base game to play. What's worse, purchasing any number of loot boxes won't guarantee their contents, and while some players got exactly what they wanted from playing, others essentially threw away hundreds of dollars on nothing. Using the same system, Counter-Strike was accused of promoting gambling with the buying and selling of weapon cases for real-world currency. This has obvious issues, and consumers have grown to detest the implementation of loot box mechanics for good reason. Okay, so I've rambled long enough. What does any of this have to do with Fortnite? Well, from an economic perspective, it's a great example of a game as a service done correctly. No paywall, no subscription, no loot boxes, and free content updates over time. The secret to its success is one thing and one thing alone. Its in-game cosmetics are expensive. And before you shout that I'm supporting corporate greed, hear me out. I paid $60 to buy Overwatch on release and have never bought a loot box. There are a lot of in-game skins I wish I had, and I try to pull them from weeklies when I get a chance to play, but Overwatch has so many in-game items these days, it's hard to hit what you want out of sheer randomness. Like many players, I can't justify paying more with no guarantee from what I'm buying. With Fortnite, or any game that follows its pattern in the future, I know exactly what I'll get before making a purchase, and because some items in Fortnite can be priced up to $20 each, insane I know, they're way more exclusive than the legendary skins in Overwatch. You can spend up to $20 and get exactly what you want in Fortnite, or you can spend nothing at all and continue on as an FTPer, no questions asked. That's pretty damn cool. Now I shouldn't have to clarify this, but I will anyway. I am not saying that Fortnite is a better game than Overwatch or RuneScape or anything else on the market today. In fact, I think a lot of the mechanics are poorly implemented, and the spam building Epic Games allows at the end of matches is asinine and obnoxious. And I'm certainly not praising it for the fact that it's a battle royale game. All those clones from E3 are going to crash and burn, just wait. Fortnite is simply setting a positive economic example for future companies to follow. But on top of that, Epic Games is using their newfound brand power to work towards something the entire gaming community can appreciate. Cross-platform play is becoming the standard. Trying to get console manufacturers to play nice with one another has been an ongoing challenge for years, with only a few rare examples to show for all the effort. The truth is, no amount of petitioning or outrage from consumers is going to convince a boardroom of investors that allowing their customers to play with non-customers will make them more money, because it won't. People buy consoles to play exclusive games and to form parties with their friends. Is it ethical to segregate people based on their platform of choice? Of course not. But so far, it has made the big three a lot of money. But with that said, within the last year, some very unusual things have taken place. Microsoft, after purchasing Minecraft from Notch for $2.5 billion US, not only continued to allow the sale and play of Minecraft on their competitors' devices, they also flipped the switch on cross-platform play as well. Like Minecraft, Fortnite also has PC, Xbox One, PS4, Switch, and mobile versions available, and like Minecraft, also allows cross-platform play between any and all of them. Well, except Sony. Remember 2013, when Microsoft reigned supreme with the Xbox 360, and the Xbox One was hyped to be the leader of the next console generation. Do you remember what happened? Microsoft abused their position in first place and announced that the Xbox One would be an always-online media center that would not play used or rented games, among other manipulative tactics. Many people switched to Sony's camp, and the PS4 became the leader of the 8th console generation. Well now, 5 years later, Sony is making a mistake of similar consequence. Sony's current stance on cross-platform play is that PlayStation users will not play with competing consoles, period. And despite pressure from Microsoft, Nintendo, and Epic Games, is content to keep their users secluded in a big blue bubble in the hopes of selling another console or two. Players are growing frustrated, and there are reports that once you link a Fortnite account with a PS4, that account is locked out of cross-platform play permanently, even if you manually disconnect the PS4 link at a later date. Once Sony touches your account, it's too late. So keep your eyes open, because something big is about to happen within the next year or so. Sony is either going to cave into pressure from developers and consumers by revoking their segregatory stance on cross-platform interactivity, or risk slipping to second place behind either Microsoft or Nintendo. Have you seen the new Minecraft ad that shows the Switch and Xbox playing together? Look out, Sony. Your competitors are looking better than ever. With Fortnite, Minecraft, Rocket League, and other giants announcing their intent to join the cross-platform team later this year, the manipulative platform segregation of the past is becoming less tolerated, and now the ball is in Sony's court. I love the PlayStation platform, and I really hope Sony makes the right decision here, but if not, who can say where I'll be playing games in the future? Although I wouldn't herald Fortnite as one of my favorite games or anything, I do think it's setting a good example. So I hope Epic Games keeps the pressure up, and I hope the future is one where we all play together.